minus 3, 2, 1, 0.
Hey, my friends, and welcome to another episode of the Launch Sequence Podcast. It's episode 82, a lovely December. It's kind of like my birthday episode. It's my birth week, so, I'm taking all the favors I can get, which includes bringing in two old friends, two previous guests of the podcast, Morphologis and GriffinGamingRPG. How you both doing today?
Doing great. Thanks for asking.
Did he just call us old?
I think he did. I think there's a trend going on here. He's very self-conscious now.
See, now that's just deliberate misunderstanding.
He's in the club now. That's why the
He
big
is.
3-0, right?
Yeah, I get to talk about dad jokes and stuff and home projects. I'm going to go and stand out by the car next door and just kind of cross my arms and nod and say, yep, that looks
Get
right.
off my lawn. Get off my lawn.
See, that's where you're mistaken. There's a certain point after 30 where all your jokes become dad jokes. You just do it subconsciously.
That's what I've heard. And I've been practicing. Not sure I'm ready, but I'm excited to be in the ranks now. So, yeah, I am the big 3-0, and it's been a lovely week. I've been enjoying it. Unfortunately, though, the biggest present that I was hoping for of all was not delivered, an Alpha 318 PTU release. CIG, where you at? Come on. I blew my candles out. And they weren't in a new cave on Daymar. But anyways, today is actually going to be a lot about kind of 318. Well, not so much about 318 as last episode. We talked about the patch last episode, but this week we're talking more about the year as a whole. This is part of the 3-part kind of series I'm doing, which is looking at our current and past situations of the game and what's going to be happening next year. And so I thought I'd bring these two on to talk about what they thought of this year. There's Morph is already giving you some foreshadowing there. And if we have some time at the end, we'll move on to 2023. So just to get started off, let's talk about kind of the present. How are you both feeling about the fact that we're still not seeing 318 on the PTU? Are you nervous? Are you validated? What are you feeling?
Why don't you go first, Griffin?
You're in the middle. You're next to him. You can go
Oh
first.
no, okay. Sure.
Did it on purpose.
I can't escape it. All right. Well, I have to say though, it actually surpassed my expectations in terms of delays. I had, we'll go into this topic a little bit. I made a particular video that some people weren't happy about at the beginning of the year.
Some people.
Yeah, I actually, at least in that video, thought we would get server meshing this year. Or not server meshing, PES this year.
Yeah.
And that server meshing might be tested at the end of the year, maybe. But it seems like now we're more like maybe we'll get PES in PTU this year. So I don't know, man. And then I realized that it's hard to remember these things because it's a whole year and you're a content creator covering so much information, and then go back and try to look at it as a whole and try to process all that information is sometimes kind of difficult.
Yeah,
but
that's true.
It was pointed out by Zero State, and this is kind of what started off this post I made that you've already seen, probably, that we've only gotten one major patch this year, 317. And then somebody else pointed out, even I just saw yesterday, and I was like, it's totally true. A lot of the features in 317 were actually features that were originally listed for 316 in 2021.
Yeah.
So in fact, things have gotten quite pushed back in 2022. It has not been a good year in terms of like tangible progress. I think it's been one of the worst years, I think, since maybe 2.6. But there are reasons for that, and we can go into them. It's not necessarily a bad thing for the universe, because there's some important technology being worked on, but it certainly isn't a great year for people who want to play the game.
I'm sorry, when you said the universe, my first thought was like the universe as a whole, like everybody everywhere. Like, I'm sure it won't bother them too much.
Yeah, Chris is God.
But yeah, sorry, keep going.
Year 0 will begin when Star Citizen releases.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So like, I mean, I guess it's too broad of a topic to just say in one quick quip. But
yeah, we'll get into it.
Overall, I would say, in sum, I think this year has not been the year for Star Citizen.
Okay. Um, but overall, so the 318 sounds like a pretty rotten cherry on top for you. Then the fact that it's kind of this late, even though you were expecting PES to be in
Yeah.
earlier in the year. Yeah. How about?
Yeah, because it does mean when we're talking about future things that server meshing is probably also going to be pushed back. And according to the Asia One interview that was conducted, it does seem like now it's certain that it's going to be at the very earliest Q4.
Yeah,
So
which is
uh,
which could possibly mean 2024 static server meshing, but we'll get more into that again.
mm,
Griffin, how about you in terms of 318? It hasn't reached PTU yet, kind of, I guess, from the beginning of the year, throughout the year maybe, or even as recently as December. How do you feel about it?
I don't know. I'm in a maybe a different space than some folks are. I look at the development of this based upon like how when I first got involved in it. I had always said to myself 10 years minimum on this for a Star Citizen. That's just kind of the number I said based upon my limited knowledge about development, because it was a bit ambitious. It wasn't, you go back and compare other projects that have been done by other companies and renowned companies, and you look at the timelines that they spend putting together everything from a single player to an MMO. The window that we're in, I don't look at the window that we're in as being anything more than what other companies have done. For CIG to be a company that started from scratch, had no engine, had to redo an engine, made some failures in the beginning, hurdles like all companies do when they're starting up. Um, I look at the process of the last 7 to 8 years versus 10 years of being where they've been in development, and to be doing both Star Citizen and Squadron 42 simultaneously. I have a little bit more room as far as my expectations go. Now, if I base it upon what they say they're going to accomplish and what they're going to do, to Morph's point, there was a lot of stuff that was added in, but it was stuff from the past that we saw, right? And I
Hmm.
agree 100% on that. The other side of the coin that I have to look at, though, is the other side that says what is happening in relation to community and player base, and what do the numbers say? And even though there's been great disappointment, particularly for those of us who've been around for a long time, their numbers have increased. They have more people playing. They have people who are coming in who don't have the angst that many of us who've been around a long time have, who come in and say, this game is great. I've been watching videos over the last few weeks from content creators who said, I've been keeping my distance from this game for the past 4 or 5 years, and I'm playing it now, and I'm either digging what they're doing or I'm starting to understand what they're doing. Looking at the revenue stream. And so there's one group of people who are very happy with where things are, and it has nothing to do with update 3.18, right? They're happy with what they have right now. For me, I have to be careful because I can get real cynical. I can very easily, we have people now who don't know what a 30K is. They have no
Oh,
idea because they didn't experience what we experienced in it. 30K sticks in our throats entirely different than when they get a 30K. So for me, it's kind of a bittersweet thing, if anything. 318 not being here, if it gets here, as far as I'm concerned, I believe it will. Like Morph, I think we'll at least get it in live. If it goes, I mean, not live into PTU. If it goes live, that's even better. Um,
that would be
but
something special if it made
yeah,
it to live this way.
it would be, but I also know how our community is. If it goes into live, if you remember a few patches back when it went into live and it wasn't ready, people went ape. They went crazy on CIG. So, giving us a product that's playable is also important. If it stays in
Yeah,
PTU and it's funky, people can kind of tolerate it. But if it goes live and it ain't ready, I'm a little nervous about that. But I to me right now, PES is there. The Gen 12. I've talked to people who, people who have experienced it, and they're very happy with what they've seen in relation to performance, and how the game is stepping up. So, I, you know, I hope it comes out. I'd hate to have to wait through the vacation week of CIG to wait till January or whatever for it to come out. But
yeah,
I try to keep my brain in a certain space when it comes to these patches, especially end of the year patches.
yeah. And from your perspective, or rather from what you were saying, it does sound like it's easy to view the game in different ways based on having kind of a snapshot view. Like, hey, this is on my peripheral for 3 years, and now I jumped in to try it out, and it's pretty cool. Versus people like us who are watching it week after week and seeing the delays and seeing the shuffle and seeing like how things are getting done, but they keep on getting pushed and removed and all this stuff. And it's easy to be, it's funny because it was easy to be more negative. Well, I'm not even going to put that on a timeline. I feel like both instances can give you a very easy avenue into being very positive or negative about what's going on, because there's just so much going on that you can see something positive or negative, and that kind of compounds with you. But overall, the feelings surrounding this year seem to go back to what everybody was expecting at the beginning of the year. And I think
Not
the
everybody, but some people. Some people who are realistic and had been seasoned enough to know what probably
well,
was going to go down when they said, we're going to focus on Squadron 42 more this year. I know what you're saying. I know what you're saying.
well, and I wanted to actually bring that back to you because of all the
Yeah.
people who set their expectations, you probably made the biggest splash, I would say. Plenty of people put out what they thought was going to happen throughout the year.
Hmm.
Your opinion caught fire. And for some people, it burned a fire throughout the whole year. And now you're coming back and saying you feel like it was worse than you predicted in that video. So,
Yeah, it was definitely worse than I predicted. Yeah,
so the way that we
unfortunately.
felt about the year overall, I think it seems to be based on our expectations. Do you guys think or even remember really what CIG was setting as expectations back, say, in January or
Yeah.
February with that first update, which was the schedule update? What were they trying to prepare people for?
I mean, let's remember that not too long. Oh, I mean, shortly after CitizenCon, the last one that we had, like the real in-person one,
Hmm.
they were talking about server meshing being around the corner. They were talking about Pyro, and how they're working on it. And it just kept feeling like, oh, we're not too long away. Maybe we're 6 months away. We're 2 patch cycles. Maybe we're at the end of the year. And then at the end of 2021, we got the letter from the chairman, which outlined how 2022 was supposed to roll out and how they wanted to get PES in by the mid part of the year, but it might get delayed a little bit.
Wait, did
But
we got one at the end of 2021? I don't even
it
remember
was
that.
either at the end of 2021 or the beginning of 2022, but it was towards the beginning of the year.
Okay.
Um,
Oh, the one that came out.
and
I'm sorry, the one that came out that was like May-ish kind of time?
yeah, I've got a
Okay,
video
gotcha.
on it.
Okay.
Actually, let me well, I don't know if it's important the exact date, but if we could find the video of it, I posted it shortly after it came out,
Yeah.
and then
I
it'll
just
give us the
didn't
date.
know if I was missing another one, but it was sometime in the first half of this year. So we know
Yeah.
that much and set up some expectations.
Yeah, it set some expectations for well, actually it was on the 18th of May. But no,
Okay.
no, that this year in review. What? Is it in review? No, that was 18th of May. So towards the beginning of the year, Chris had come out and he said, this year we're going to try to get PSN and we're going to try to maybe test server meshing by the end of the year. And it set some expectations, but at some point earlier than that, it was said on multiple occasions by CIG that CIG or that now they're shifting their focus to Squadron 42. They became public about it for years up until then. I think many of us had speculated that a lot of their efforts were going into Squadron 42, that they were putting most of their teams on it. And then from when they started saying, "Hey, we're going to start focusing more on Squadron 42," I knew what that meant right away. It meant that, hey, we're probably not going to have as much tangible content for Star Citizen anymore because we're focusing on Squadron 42. That's what I read from that. The only reason for them to tell us that is because it's going to affect Star Citizen's development in some way. And I think we've seen the unfortunate effects of that is that, you know, there really hasn't been much content this year. I think were it not for Squadron 42, this year would have been a pretty good year in terms of tangible progress towards the goal of Star Citizen. But it's unfortunately because of that single player campaign, who God knows how long it's going to take to finish. We're probably in for a similar experience until that game comes out, or until they get more people to work on Star Citizen.
And
Who knows when that's going to happen?
you don't feel that the features that were initially delayed because of Squadron might experience that delay, but then be delivered. You think that the delay will constantly reset rather than there being one initial delay at the beginning of this sort of bigger focus on Squadron, and then as that stuff starts to be made for Squadron and comes over to Star Citizen, you think there will still be repetitive delays in that process?
Oh, I think we're already seeing repetitive delays. I mean, PES was supposed to be the gap between PES, as Chris was talking about for testing, was 6 months.
Oh, no, I'm sorry.
And
I mean the features that they're building in Squadron that come over to, so like the EVA stuff and the platforming and the mobiGlass, that
right,
kind of stuff.
right. So here's the problem with that. And this is something that I've been trying to explain to people. This from CIG's perspective, from their marketing perspective, their focus on Squadron 42 has to be painted in some sort of positive light. So what they're going to say is that, hey, we're going to work on stuff for Squadron 42 first, and then we're going to move it over to Star Citizen. And in this way, it's going to be more polished. The real reason why they're doing this is not because they want to make it more polished. It's because it's more streamlined and less frustrating for them to work on the feature set for one game and then port it over to the other game later if they have the time, if it's convenient. And in most cases, it's not. And that's why we're not seeing as much content as they hinted that we would be getting more content because the Squadron 42 is polished. It'd be more polished, but that's really not going to be the case because a lot of these features, as we've started to see, for example, for the Master Modes rework, that stuff is only for the Squadron 42 ships because that's what's convenient for them to make. When they get to make all the other ships, who knows? It seems it's looking like at the end of next year. That's how long we're gonna have to wait for the Master Modes rework. The EVA stuff. How long has it been since they added new hair, for example? I know it's a small thing into Squadron 42, and we've not gotten it in Star Citizen. Years and years they've had a ton of hair and customization in Squadron 42 that we've not gotten in Star Citizen.
Mm-hmm.
It's not convenient for them to move it over. It's not efficient for them. If they want to get Squadron 42 done from their perspective, they just put Star Citizen on the back burner, have some small teams here and there, some things to keep people satiated, and that's it. And that's kind of where we're at right now with it. I just don't buy the Squadron 42 making content more polished. I think all it means is that the focus is very narrowly limited to certain features that are only single player based. So, for example, Squadron 42 doesn't need any organization mechanics. It doesn't need a functioning economy. It doesn't need quanta. It doesn't need any of that stuff because it's not a multiplayer game. It's a single player game. Mm-hmm. So that stuff, back burner. All the teams that'd be working on that otherwise, they're working on Squadron 42. The engineers, they're working on Squadron 42 or PES or server meshing. They're not concerned with functioning economy. They're not concerned with gameplay loops. They're not concerned with anything that Star Citizen is exclusive to Star Citizen. They're only concerned with things that are exclusive to Squadron 42. And if they overlap with Star Citizen, great. Then they can give us some more features and people, they continue getting more funding. But yeah, I mean, they're not ignorant of the fact that they need to continue to gather more funding by producing more features. But they are focused on Squadron 42. Yeah. And we can talk about why that is. I think that's another discussion. But that's basically where I'm at with that.
They're definitely focused on Squadron, and I'm waiting to see what happens with things like EVA, the mobiGlass, the hover trolleys, the things that they've shown they've worked on for Squadron. I'm waiting to see what kind of time it takes for those to make it into Star Citizen, because that's how I'm going to set my expectations in terms of at least how they're trying to sell it. If you guys are saying you're going to put together a feature and in 6 months it makes it into Star Citizen, 9 months it makes it into Star Citizen, that's probably kind of how I'm going to think of them going forward, depending on the level of polish. But
another example is the mobiGlass. They showed us a new building blocks mobiGlass for Squadron 42. It's not on the roadmap. It's not in 318. It's clearly been done for a while, but they said directly in the video at
mobiGlass is on the roadmap.
Oh, they said no, it's on the progress tracker. It's not on the roadmap. The progress tracker is okay. That's another annoying subject that we can talk about. The progress tracker, I hate that thing. They showed us the mobiGlass, but they said in the presentation, here's the new mobiGlass that we've been working on for Squadron 42. However, and they caveated this right in the video, right in the CitizenCon little video that they did. They said this is a unique mobiGlass for Squadron 42. Mm-hmm. For this to be put in the Star Citizen requires more work. When will they schedule that work? Who knows? Because it's not priority.
Yeah, and
And that's the problem with them focusing on Squadron 42 and then saying, "Hey, some of the stuff is going to make the Star Citizen." It probably isn't, not for a long time.
the confusing part of it is that the work on the progress tracker is split between the two, so you can't actually tell what's work going into Squadron versus Star Citizen.
And that's not even the most confusing bit. The most confusing bit is that when something ends, there's no note as to why it ends. It doesn't say we stopped here because we had to retask teams on more priorities.
Yeah.
It doesn't say we stopped here because this task is now complete and awaits other technologies for it to come online. It's basically what we're working on chart, and that's not very useful. It just tells us that they are working on things.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. I know you're working. I hope you're working on things. That's why I'm giving you money. But I would like to, like they should definitely add at least some information or notes as to why things end, because it would end so much confusion and frustration in the community. Because when you put something like that, and when you see something ends, the automatic assumption by the layman, the person who's not up to date with Star Citizen development, would be, oh, that feature must be complete because it ends here. That is what people think, just natively. You don't have to try to. You've got to realize that the people who are consuming this are not your closest fans. These people who are consuming this are average Joe who just bought the game and want to keep track with development. And they say, "Oh, cool, here's a roadmap. Let me go check this out. Oh, cool, look at all these things they're working on." Oh man,
The progress
I
tracker
don't know.
is pretty poor in its use. If you
Could,
look at
and
the
it could be
dates in which
good.
it was updated, a lot of them are more than a year old. So
Yeah,
oftentimes you're looking at outdated info, and that's why when I use that as a source for my own videos and discussions and streams, I tell people like it says that the work is ending here, and there is a possibility that we could see it. If you see work ending, add an extra 3 to 6 months onto it, and that's when you should start the window of possibilities that it might show up. Um, Always fun to speculate on the possibilities of them, but the progress tracker is not necessarily that reliable to know when things are coming to the game. But Griff,
yeah.
for the year, for you as well, I know we got a little off topic, but for the overall kind of vibe of the year, the expectations that were being set at the beginning of the year, how did it end up going compared to what you thought CIG was trying to at least tell people?
Yeah, yeah. I've been around long enough to know that when CIG tells us something, like you said, you almost want to automatically tack on a certain amount of extra time to whatever it is. Um, I still wrestle. I agree with Morph in the sense of from the communication aspect. I think that sometimes CIG underestimates the community when it comes to, for example, you were saying when something dramatic changes or something changes that puts something off, it pushes it off. Maybe it's because technology isn't available, or maybe it's because another team hasn't completed something. They have alluded to the fact that that's the problem, but I think that it doesn't get articulated well to people in the community. So I think that they definitely, I think when the whole thing happened, going from what was it, from iCache to what was the thing before we went into PES? What was it called?
Super P
Object
cache?
containers, socks. Remember
Oh,
socks
object
came
container
up,
streaming, yeah.
and then they told us that there were some problems with that, and then that morphed into PES, right? Uh, you
Well,
know,
object container streaming was before. You're thinking of the iCache and Super P cache, I think.
that was first. iCache was first,
Yeah.
and then
And then they
socks
started
came, and then they went from socks to PES. They were all still tied into the inventory persistence aspect of the game. They mentioned something about the socks. Something didn't work with socks. There was something that didn't work. I don't remember what it was.
OCS, object container streaming?
Yeah, there was something that it changed that it became PES, I thought later on. Maybe I'm
No, no,
wrong.
I think you're talking. I think you're thinking about the last version that what iCache morphed into. 'Cause they stopped calling it iCache, didn't they? And it
Yeah, they
started.
called it something else.
They
Yeah.
called it something else, and that thing, they said it didn't have the performance
Thank you. That's what I'm
that they
talking about.
expected. Yeah,
I
it wasn't fast enough. It was having issues, so they had
Right.
to figure out a different solution.
Thank you. So it wasn't socks, but it was thank you, Morph. That's what my
Mhm.
point is that we didn't hear about that was the roadblock, that was the problem until after they got past it, right?
Yeah.
And so again, like you said, it raises questions when they talk about something and then something doesn't come out. So I wish they would. Um, I realize that there's some folks in the community that can't handle the news no matter what the news is, but I think that they should put the news out irregardless.
Well, that's a good point.
You know,
How do you guys feel about the idea? What do you think would have happened if they had come out and said, "Hey, the thing that was going to work, it doesn't work." Like it's
Well,
going to take us a while to figure out what's going to work, as opposed to figuring out what was going to work and then telling people, hey, that didn't work, but don't worry, we got to fix.
well, look, I think what we say is irrelevant, because the Asia One article, in the interview, they said any publicity is good publicity. So whether or not people take it badly or well, it's publicity. So just be transparent by your own words. It doesn't matter. Just be transparent.
Well,
Don't
that's
wait
because
because you think people are going to get pissed off.
they've avoided coming out and saying we can't do this. Every
Of
time
course,
that
because
they
it'd be
find out they
bad
can't do it.
publicity.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So
There'd be 20 articles, talking about how Star Citizen is going to fail because a major technology can't be accomplished. So yeah, but if
I,
they said that no publicity is bad publicity. So
Well, it can be though. It can be bad,
yeah,
and we've experienced bad PR for this game,
sure.
especially as they're trying to move toward a positive launch and release for other games. Again, listening to community people over the last few weeks who have had that thing stuck in their throat. I have friends who were playing Elite. I played Elite when it came out. I baited it, but I
Mhm.
didn't know that there was an attitude amongst many Elite players that Star Citizen was a scam, even until Odyssey came out. They honestly thought it was trash. That still exists in the gaming community. I agree with you, Morph. I think it should come out regardless. My problem with the term transparency, and people will yank transparency out of their butts all the time, but there was never this 100% transparency. They just said there would
Mhm.
be transparency. I'm not saying you're saying that, but there are some people who want the whole freaking curtain yanked down for us to see the wizard all the time, and that's not practical or realistic with this game.
No, no,
You know, and I think
no.
that. I'm not gonna say you're not saying it, but I'm saying there are people who feel like, well, just show us everything. Why can't we know what's going on behind the curtains? And I don't think that
that's
that's a good thing either. You
that's
know,
where I'm coming from with the how
Yeah.
they announced that thing, because I'm in the same boat. I was like, homie, iCache. Like, we didn't hear about that from like mid 2021. It just disappeared from monthly reports. They didn't tell us anything at the
Yeah.
end of 2021.
Mhm.
Nothing with the February meetings of 2022. Nothing with the redoing of the roadmap. Like, I was like, yo, we need to know what's going on here. And then they told
Mhm.
us,
Yeah.
and it took me a while to realize, it was like, okay, if they had come out at the beginning of 2021, middle of the pandemic, things were not necessarily all that positive, and they had just been like, iCache doesn't work. I am trying to think of what would have happened, not necessarily with the articles and stuff, but the community, the funding. Um, I don't know. This is why I'm not never going to start something like this, because I wouldn't want to make that call. But I don't know what the right call is there, to be honest. There's a right call, I guess, in terms of the backers and their trust, and there's a right call in terms of keeping the game going.
I
And
don't think it would have affected funding if that was their practice all the time. If we know that that's what they're doing and they're keeping us abreast, like
mhm.
Morph said, and it becomes a part of the normal communication, we know that they're trying to work through technology and things that maybe haven't been done before. So if they say, "Hey, we tried this,
Yeah,
it's not working, but we're hitting it hard again," I think the community would be okay with that. I really do. There's always going to be some naysayers, right?
at
But
the
I think
Mhm.
that the people who understand that this is in development, that they are trying to do some things that are very different, that they would give them the room and grace for that. And that's why I say I think they need to trust the community a little bit more with information. It may not be everything, but like that iCache example for me, that was a definite. That
yeah,
that to me
yeah.
should have been articulated in some form.
I kind of get it, man. I see some of the takes surrounding this game. I saw somebody mention today in a comment somewhere. They said that, like, um they said all this work and all this time and all server meshing is going to be as a loading screen between two star systems. And they've spent so much effort trying to show that server meshing isn't about the different star systems, it's about the one star system, but these things don't they don't travel. Like, people,
Mhm.
you expect people to know this stuff, and then it's just like it is completely in one ear and out the other. Or, people don't take the time to look themselves. But I always wonder, what, like, the situation that you're talking about, what would it be like if they were just completely open with that kind of stuff all the time?
It's hard to say depending on the format that they shared that information. If they shared that information, as Griffin says, regularly, and maybe had it more technically worded or something. Yeah, those sorts of information. I think that's the kind of information I think is quite niche. isn't necessarily looked at by a wider community who buys ships at ship sales, who
Yeah,
see
that's
the
fair.
fancy advertisements.
Hmm.
So I think so long as it doesn't, and it probably won't catch wind of like big news organizations, I I, I think it's fine. And I don't think the problem with big news organizations, or like that kind of negative press is a bad thing, or will even happen as frequently as it used to, because I I think that the thing is that Star Citizen's been around for a while. It doesn't seem like it's going anywhere. I think people are just kind of like um indifferent to it at this point because they've seen so many articles about how it's passed this and that funding. And
Yeah.
notice how many articles came out about it passing 500 million versus how many came out about it passing like 300 million,
Yeah,
Mhm.
400
it
million.
was kind of
There's way
quiet.
more back then.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very quiet about 500. I think people are just indifferent about it now, which is both good and bad. I mean, it's good because, uh, fewer articles that way, but it's bad also because indifference isn't great. They need to really now make some waves in a positive way versus
Let me throw
a
something at
negative
you.
way.
I agree there is some indifference. I think there's also they don't know what to do with it
Mhm.
because there were those who said that we'd never reach 300 million. There were those who said that it would never reach 400 or 500 million. And there's a quandary of people trying to figure out why are these people still getting money? I think that's another question too. And I think that some of the industry rags and stuff are pulled back a little bit because that original scam it's going to fail thing may not be good for them in the future. They may be
Mhm.
just sitting back now and waiting and watching and seeing what's going on because they're hearing what people are, they're watching these YouTubers. They're seeing people who are new and coming in and playing the game. They're not seeing all the glitch videos anymore and, body sticking up out of the freaking ramp. I mean,
Oh,
they're
I've got
paying
plenty
attention.
archived. I can send them over.
Yeah, but I'm talking about the common, everydayness that was
Yeah.
there, but which they could ridicule in the past, all the time.
Yeah.
And so there may be just a few of them who are also saying, well, let's see what happens here,
Oh,
you
I
know.
certainly think
Uh,
the view of it has changed over time.
yeah, I mean, I think the time has also been it's both a curse and a blessing, because at a certain point it becomes illogical to make the argument that it's like going to be a rug pull.
Yeah,
They
yeah.
keep hiring more people. Chris has continued to stay around, continued to care about the project. Say what you will about the length of development and its management. I have my own personal opinion about it. I don't think as bad as people say it is.
Mhm.
But they continue to run a very well-oiled self-funding machine that doesn't seem to be going anywhere. I can't think of a single thing that's going to just suddenly stop it in its tracks. Like a market collapse or something that's happened to some other games recently, like what happened to Star Atlas with FTX's collapse. That has kind of stopped it in its tracks for a little bit. It's not Star Citizen's funding is just individual crowdfunding. It's people putting money into it, and as long as people keep doing that, and they keep doing that, it's gonna stick around.
Yeah.
So
Well, you had a prediction about this year. My prediction about this year from last year was that, well, the money's going to probably taper off and we're going to start seeing it go down. That was honestly my prediction. I honestly felt like, we're
me
reaching that
too.
10th year. And I said, it's going to level off. We're not going to be breaking records anymore. And I think that's going to be a sign of what I looked at it as was that a sign of how the community was responding. And what I didn't factor in was that there is enough there so that even us old dogs, we may be melting, but there's another group of people bringing in fresh money that are
Yeah.
coming in and spending the
Yeah.
dough.
Yeah.
And that's what I didn't factor in. I didn't think that that would happen, and that's what's happening now.
And that's also kind of dangerous for the game, right? Because
In what way?
if they see the market that is now spending more of the money and starting to pick up more of you're always diversifying your market. So like I don't know about you guys, but I see constant arguments over things that old backers know and understand is true to the game, and the things that new backers think is something that's being introduced to the game and changing it. We saw it with the Death of a Spaceman stuff and the medical stuff last
Yeah.
year, the inventory stuff. We hear it with engineering.
Yeah.
We see it a lot. And I think that same thing can kind of happen with the development. If you start seeing all this money coming from newer backers that also kind of want a more casual experience, I'm not saying this is what's happening, but there's always a danger that the game starts to shift in that direction to cater more for those people as old backers maybe become less interested in the development or the way it's going, or simply disenfranchised from buying ships, I guess.
Mm, Maybe. I'll tell you why I was so thinking that the numbers are going to change too. We came out of COVID where people were spending stupid money.
Hmm.
And I thought once we
Mhm.
came out of COVID, that was going to be why the dollar drop would happen. And yet, and still, even in the midst of inflation, COVID, and everything else, people are still spending money. The limited ships still freaking fly out the window. Krakens still disappear within
Yeah,
seconds. I mean, that's
yeah.
still freaky to me. And there were long-term players which freaked me out. There were long-term players who were going to spend 4 digits on chips that I thought most of those people would have been like, I
Oof.
bought everything I'm gonna buy, and they're still doing it. So I
Also would know they're not coming for a while.
exactly, and they know that. There's no evidence that the Idris is popping out near the Javelin next week, you know what I mean? So they're still
Mhm.
willing to do it. What the motivations are can vary,
Hmm.
they can vary for what's happening, but to Morph's point, somebody, whether we like the way marketing is done or whatever, the numbers don't lie. The numbers are still coming in for them, and I do worry a little bit about when we will see that shift, but we ain't seen it yet. Year 10, if there was a reason to bark about anything, people could have, oh, we're in the 10th year, it's the anniversary, nothing's changed. When they
You
look
see,
100
you
freaking
see
million
it,
dollars.
you see it here and there. But what do you think can account for the continued increase? If you guys were expecting it to taper off this year, is it more people, more ship sales? Why are they continuing to make even more money?
I'm in test. We've had a lot of players come back to play that have been gone since 2016. I don't know where that came from because I thought it was just maybe because it was IAE, you know what I mean, or something. But since Invictus, in fact, we've had players coming back playing who said, I haven't been here since 2017, 2018. Wow, the game has changed so much. I don't know if that's just the stability, that's just enough, that there's enough stability there that people don't get frustrated like they used to.
Hmm.
Because before, you'd get people come in when a patch came in, played for a few weeks, and then they were out of there because there just wasn't enough there. Um, we have people who play regularly now, much more regularly than we had in the past too, that have been in the org for a while. So I'm not completely sure what it is. And then we've had new people. We've got a crew of new people. I don't know any
A
of these
lot of new
jokers, and they
people.
come in
Yeah,
every night and they're playing, and they've been playing past IE. They're not playing because or the events come up. They're playing. Because for them, maybe it's just they just don't have all that stuff inside of them yet that keeps them coming back playing.
yeah.
I don't know.
More. What do you think? Why do you think the money continued in 2022?
I was of the same mind as Griffin going into 2022, thinking that coming off the pandemic, it's going to be a contraction, but it's not what we saw happen. And I mean, we're talking about this after the fact, and so it's hard to make any kind of predictions on how things will go. But I like from what I've seen, yeah, as Griffin says, I think there are people coming back, but I think there's also another component to this, and that's the outside industry is not in a really good place in terms of
Mhm.
interesting or innovative games,
Yeah.
Yep,
especially in the science fiction market. The
yep.
only game that's going to be coming out anytime soon that's like a new title is Starfield,
Mhm.
and that game isn't even trying to be Star Citizen. It's trying to be a Fallout in space experience, which has its own merits. I mean, it could last for a really long time and have a cult following, but
Yeah.
it's not a multiplayer game, which I think some people crave, that big mixed ambitious multiplayer experience that Star Citizen delivers. And I think that the other thing that I noticed last year during Invictus, because I was tracking the numbers for videos, and I think I put it out in one of the videos that I had done, was the new backers versus funding for the event. And an interesting trend I had noticed between 2 years was that while the money continued to increase, the amount of new backers decreased. So what that meant was that existing backers were spending more money
Mhm.
on ships. And I think once you're in the Star Citizen cult, um, you look at other games with a little bit of disappointment. You're like, oh, it'd be great if they would have done this or that. Star Citizen isn't perfect. Star Citizen is not perfect by any means, but at least what it has and what it's trying to accomplish is ambitious, interesting, and exciting, whereas other titles just aren't. What you see is what you get. They're kind of disappointing, and they have a very short shelf life, and you move on from them. But you keep coming back to Star Citizen if you're a science fiction nerd who loves this genre. That's what I found myself doing, and so you continue to be more comfortable spending more money on it because you want it to stick around, and you're happy to go back into it with these shiny new ships.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's
and
well
then
said.
I think another thing is that the world is really big. There are younger people, you know, who maybe saw their parents or older brother playing Star Citizen when they were very, very young, who are
That's
now
so
in their
funny to
20s.
hear.
Yeah, they were 10, now they're like 20. All right, just want to give some perspective how fucking long this project's been going on. Excuse my language. Those people are like they're legit. There are definitely people like that who are now coming into their first job. They now have disposable income. They've wanted to get into Star Citizen, and they are. And there's the world is big. There's a lot of people. If they the more Star Citizen adds more features that are more appealing to a wider audience, the better their marketing team becomes, and they are getting really amazingly good at marketing the game.
Yeah.
The more people they attract. There's a huge, huge pool of potential players out there that Star Citizen could target, and they are slowly but surely getting more and more of that wider market.
Yeah.
And that's why I think I'm not going to make any predictions in terms of how good the funding is going to be next year, but I think it's fairly safe to say that funding will continue to stay similar or at least grow. I don't think we're going to see a significant contraction between this year and next year, simply because there's good stuff on the horizon. They seem to have marketing down, and they are paying for marketing, by the way. That is public knowledge. They're actually paying for Google Ads. So yeah, I guess that's my thought.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so to round it up, just more awareness that the game is actually in a playable state. People coming back
Mhm.
who feel comfortable with the game, know that they've been here for a long time, because you might jump into a game and, 2 years, something could stick around but eventually collapse. And at this point, like you were saying, everybody kind of knows Star Citizen is here to stay. And you feel a little
Mhm.
more comfortable spending that money. And then um,
Yeah.
obviously, the big YouTubers that came in, we didn't really talk about that. We had some people
Yeah.
like Jack Frags, Level Cap, all kind of started to produce content around the same time, and I've seen countless people be like, "Yep, that's how I learned about it.
Mhm.
That's what taught me." So,
Yeah.
um,
And it gives Star Citizen a bit more trustworthiness.
yeah,
It becomes
validity.
yeah, there's the old marketing rule where you have to see something 7 times to begin to trust it. And when it starts appearing on these big channels, I think that's really becomes the key to opening the door to a lot of people.
Yep, not quite the blow up year, but definitely caught a lot more attention from different places. And you
Yeah.
talked about the features being a good way of them continuing to bring people in, and I agree. I think adding new features, especially things that can catch headlines like salvage or optimizations like Gen 12, are going to keep bringing people in. Let's dive into that kind of talk, the feature talk, because that's a lot of what happened with this year. And honestly, we're going long on the this year talk, and but I'm more interested in what you guys thought of this year as opposed to what's going to happen next year. One of the biggest things that happened this year that doesn't get talked about very much at this point was the roadmap change. And it was like, I mean, in the week that it did happen, you it would not be weird for you to think that that was going to be a year-long topic. How do you guys think that that change ended up going? Um, did it make any major changes in your opinion? Did it ruin or make things better? What was your take on it now that we've had a good like 9 months to digest it?
Well, I'll say this. I miss it. I miss the roadmap because I
Hmm.
Me
looked at
too.
the roadmap as
Mhm.
just being a guide for what they would like to do. And but at the same time, it is with it being modified, it has shut a lot of people up. A lot less aggravation, a lot less stress. Um, that 1 month, that 1 quarter we get, I wish there was more there. I had no problem with seeing 12 months down the road. If it changed, it just changed as far as I was concerned. I've been around too long to build my life around the roadmap, but there are a lot of players who did build their life around the roadmap. And I don't know. I will say this: you don't hear the static, all the complaints, and all of the CIG broke their promise. You don't hear as much anymore. It's going by the wayside at this point. So to me, the way they introduced it was kind of funky. We all know that, but it did what it was supposed to do, as far as I'm concerned.
How about you,
Yeah.
Morph?
Disappointingly, yeah. It's I for them, I think it's been a positive because there's less information for people to look at and thus less to speculate on and less to become disappointed on. There were YouTubers out there that would make videos about looking at the next patch and what's coming out, and it would build hype on it. Let people talk about how excited they are for feature X or Y, and then it would get shifted or completely taken off the roadmap, and then there'd be, Spectrum threads that they have to delete. Um, it, yeah, I mean that's unfortunate that happens. But here's the other thing, guys. I mean, ultimately, as much as I love CIG and the people who work there, there needs to be at least some, you know, uh, not transparency. What's the word I'm looking for? There needs to be
Accountability?
accountability. Yeah, there needs to be at least some accountability, and yeah, of course they're going to get less blowback when they remove what they're saying what they're going to do, but that just means that there's less accountability.
I got a question.
Yeah.
I agree with you. I honestly do, but I'm going to ask the question as if I'm not agreeing with you.
Mm-hmm.
Love those
We're,
ones.
yeah, who are they accountable to? The agreement that we do is as a backer. We're not investors.
Mm-hmm.
They're accountable to their investors, but we basically signed something that says we like what you're doing. We want to throw some money at you so that you'll continue to do it, and hopefully it'll come out. That's the contract as far as I'm concerned. I
True.
don't know how far accountability goes. I know how much I would like to see accountable. Don't get me wrong. That's why I say I agree with you.
Yeah.
I do want some, but I know, and you're saying it in a very rational space. I've heard people say it in the irrational space, as if there is something owed to us. I think from a business
Yeah.
standpoint, there is. Don't get me wrong, because what we're doing is transactional, right? I give you something, I get something in return. So I agree. And I do agree that we should have better communications, that we feel that there's progress, because as long as we feel that there's progress and we see significant progress, we feel good about what we did. But I don't know where that line is drawn as to how accountable can we demand that CIG be? For it's like if I'm watching public broadcasting and I like something that's on television and I'm giving them $20 a month for it, and they decide to shut it off and say we aren't producing it anymore. I can't bark about that. I threw money at them because it was something that I enjoyed, and I would hope that they would continue doing it. But if the producers say we're not going to do it anymore, we're done with that broadcasting, I can't go out there. I could go out and protest about it in front of the studio, but there's no. They don't owe me anything because I
No.
donated toward their cause of what they were doing.
I will say in that metaphor, I think a lot of people are still buying into Star Citizen with the idea that they don't have the product yet. That what they're
Yeah.
buying into is the future product, and right now they just kind of get to use it because it's there. So it kind of depends on what you're viewing as the product. Not to jump on your answer, Morph, but I do think that
Mm-hmm.
at least the way that I view it when you do say that is that it's not so much a legal accountability, more so than that just like an understanding between players and company that like
But
we
but
need
what
to
hasn't
have.
what didn't CIG
Right.
deliver? What have they not delivered as a part of my transaction with them? Is there something that they have not done based upon what I've given them money for?
Well, I don't think the discussion. So let me more narrowly focus and distill the conversation into what I think we may have actually always been talking about. From a technical and legal perspective, what you say is true. They have we have no leverage. We have no tort. We can't go to court and say you've not delivered product because of the terms and agreements that we signed when we purchase a ship that says you're paying for a donation, you're giving us money, and in exchange we're giving you the ship, but we don't owe you anything. And that's very simply put, but that's essentially what it says when you buy a ship. If you
Right.
guys don't know. So technically they owe us nothing. What I think is what we're really talking about when we talk about accountability is something that creates a goal for them to finish within a set duration of time, that if they do not finish it, uh, creates negative feedback.
Mhm.
And that negative feedback, you might say, well, does that really matter? Well, according to CIG, it does, because one of the things that they cited as one of the reasons why they changed the roadmap was because it was quote unquote affecting internal teams. when the roadmap, when things weren't met. And what I think that translates into is that people felt down when they didn't meet goals. When they didn't, when the roadmap was put out, they were working on this really important feature, and then it got shifted to another feature, or that feature couldn't be completed in time. That affects people's, morale, and yeah, it brings down morale when things like that happen. But I think when you remove that goal and say, well, now, hey, look, look, now they won't feel down. Well, now it's the opposite may become true, where there's not a whole lot of um, fire to push them to work just that little bit harder to get something out in time for a patch cycle. So I think from the our perspective, it's unfortunate that that roadmap is gone, because now there's nothing really to motivate maybe themselves internally, because if something does get pushed back, who cares? Nobody really knew that it was getting pushed back. Only we do. Work on something else now. Whereas before it was like, oh shit, well, we told them we were going to get this out. Is there anything we can do to try to get at least something else out? Like that conversation's gone now, because they never talked about it in the first place.
I think it's
And
also. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
no, so I was going to say that's really, I think, the crux of the issue. It's just the self accountability, being accountable to themselves.
If they did 2 quarters instead of 1, would you feel better? Because I think I would.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think
I'd like
I
two
feel
quarters.
better,
Yeah.
Mhm.
because like I think specifically for this exact moment right now, um, where we only see 318 and it's so delayed. We know pretty much every feature in it.
Yeah.
Not knowing what's going on beyond that is a little bit stressful, and oh well, I don't know.
A
Maybe
little bit.
it's because I'm a
It's
content
very
creator.
no. It's very stressful. I mean, yeah, definitely from the
Yeah,
content creation side, but it's
Mhm.
kind of
you know,
insane to have no idea what's going on 3 months ahead in Star Citizen.
yeah. My worst fear is that we're going to have another 2022 where it's just nothing, and then 318.1, 318.2, and then we get 4.0 maybe at the end of the year, maybe in 2024 quarter one. So a whole year again of 2022 would really be unfortunate. So yeah, like for a moment right now, I think it would have just the opposite effect of creating negative feedback. It actually might give people a little bit of hope, however false it may be.
I do agree that. Well, I can't shake the feeling that, like, even if they have gotten rid of that whole feedback loop of them having to put out the details and then delaying it and getting that sort of anger, like you said earlier, Morph, that you saw on the Twitter thread where we were talking about kind of the progress of or you were talking about the progress of the year. Somebody had mentioned that a lot of the features in 317 were delayed from 316, and like, we wouldn't have known that if they were doing the roadmap at the current, the way that they're doing it now. We really wouldn't have seen that kind of shuffling around of those features because they don't do it until they're pretty certain, but it still would have been happening. And it's like,
Mhm.
is it good for the community to know that that's happening, or should that all be happening and we're just none the wiser? Like, it really depends on what you think the right way of them doing it is.
Depends on how well you handle it, because
That too,
it's the
yeah.
expectation. I mean, honestly, it's the expectation. I mean, and I get I think, Morph used the term hype, and I do get the excitement when we see something coming into the game. We as players, whether you're a content creator or you're just a player, you see something cool coming in the game, it gets you like, wow, this is going to be great. Looking forward to doing this. And then when it doesn't happen, or if it doesn't happen twice or 3 times, obviously it creates a bit of frustration from the player's perspective. From content creators, obviously, we're trying to plan out shows and stuff that can be frustrating for them. It's a tough call. I hate to say it, but if this was a closed project, we wouldn't be having this conversation. We just wouldn't
Yeah.
be.
Yeah.
We'd be playing freaking Roblox right now and figuring out what we're going to do with our lives. But Star Citizen, it's a unique animal. And my question I want to ask you guys, since I'm going to ask you a question, Tomato, if 4.0, to Morph's point, came out next year, will we still be feeling this way? Or will we look at this and say it was a hurdle, but okay, it was cool?
To be honest, I don't I mean, and I'm going to answer that question, but I don't really feel like I'm not in a very negative place when it comes to Star Citizen. I actually feel fairly good outside of the
Mm-hmm.
318 problems.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think that if 4.0 comes out next year, then the feelings would be much different. I mean, that's
And I'm only asking that because, like, when I made the statement about 30Ks, you know what I mean? For those of us who've traveled through that, 30Ks have a different feeling than someone who gets a 30K now. And I'm
right.
just kind of
Mhm.
curious as to, and I'm not trying to be the white knight about this. I'm just saying I've been around long enough that sometimes we also forget what we have been through. Like we were joking around at the beginning of the show about when we used to have to load into the game with a hard drive, right? If you never had to go through the hard drive thing, SSD is normal to you,
Yeah.
But if you remember what it was like to load into the game with a hard drive, you're like, oh my God, I've forgotten what that was like back then. And I'm wondering whether or not players will forget some of what we've had to hurdle through if the progress is significant enough.
Well, Star Citizen has this kind of quality that probably exists with a lot of different things. I've never been very intertwined with things that people are so passionate about. Star Citizen has this thing where, like, the only difference between 4.0 dropping now, as it was supposed to, and 4.0 dropping in a year late and frustrating, is the
Mhm.
time in between where everyone's annoyed. Because
Yeah,
after it comes
Mm.
out, people are just going to be happy that it exists. The same thing's happening with PES. We're all
yeah.
annoyed that it's been delayed so long, but once it's in the game, we're going to be like, heck yes, this is a step in the right direction. So,
Mhm.
yeah, I think if 4.0 comes out next year, people will have different feelings. But I want to hear what Morph has to say.
Are we talking about next year now?
Well, Griff took us off. I have one more question for you guys about last year, but yeah, go ahead
Okay.
and answer this one real quick.
I feel like we're talking about next year already. All right.
Well, Morph, you're the
No.
one who said next quarter next year, fourth quarter next year. That's why I went there. So
Oh, sorry. No,
I mean, we
we were just
can go ahead and talk about
because
next
we
year
were
because
in my view, we were reflecting in the past, like how seeing the changes to the roadmap has affected our perspective on things. Anyway. I think obviously, yeah, if at the end of next year we're sitting with 4.0, I think everybody will be really happy. But I'm actually uncertain on how much it's actually going to affect gameplay in a positive way. I have my hopes, but I also I have my worries about it. So
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah,
yeah,
to be honest, 4.0 is not. I'm not putting it much. I think the better approach is to forget about 4.0 as the goal and start to look at more of the kind of systemic things that they're trying to build. Like, I'm more excited to see, say, multi-crew gameplay developed next year, more so than a new star system
right.
and that kind of stuff, because they've got things like engineering and fire hazards and life support and that kind of stuff. I think could be something that changes the experience of the game more than just going to a new star system. So,
Yeah.
Well, to be clear, we at this point, 10 years on, we need another star system. We need at least 2 star systems of 100 because
yeah.
they've got 10 more years of 3 systems per quarter to do to be able to even do that in 10 years.
Mhm.
Anyway,
Yeah.
yeah, I agree, man. I mean, like the more exciting things are definitely going to be multi-crew gameplay and um any other gameplay systems that add something to the actual experience of Star Citizen. So
Yeah.
not just another star system.
Yeah. And I don't want to make 4.0 limited to pyro, not by any means. I'm definitely talking about mechanics, and just like how
Mhm.
3.0 was a leap for us when we left the 2 series, that 4 is something significant,
Mhm.
not just like you said, the introduction of a system.
That's a great segue into one of the questions I was going to ask in context of last year, but honestly, this goes for Star Citizen development overall. Um, because 2021 was such a weird year, for those who are a little bit more new to Star Citizen, we've only been doing 4 updates a year since 2018. So it's actually not that normal considering the entirety of Star Citizen's development, but we got used to it. And 2022, sorry, was the first year they kind of got away from that in the numbers at least. Do you guys think that it's maybe they should consider going back to content-based schedules, or do you think they need to get back on the 4 quarters a year kind of 4 updates a year, 4 major rather,
I
or
think
numbered updates a year?
I think they need to stick to the 4 content updates per year. 3 months. I would say 2 months after that a patch, things really start to trail off, and it's not because people
Mhm.
are looking forward to the next patches, because unfortunately the content in those patches just isn't enough,
Mhm.
and people start to lose interest. So if they want to keep their funding up, they need to keep doing the patches.
And whether it's a big patch or small patch, it does give psychologically the player something to say that they know is coming up, that there's
Yeah.
something gonna happen within a certain time frame, and not because those of us who were around back, was it 2015, where we had a whole freaking year, you just never knew if anything was
Oh,
gonna
yeah.
happen. That's a terrible mental space to be in.
That's going to make
And
for. Go ahead.
yeah, and I'd say there's also always polish that they need to iterate on a lot of these systems that clearly
Mhm.
have issues without those patches having to suffer through some of the really obnoxious ones. Like, for
Hmm.
example, the fact that you can ram somebody and then press charges against them is quite an obnoxious issue, and they're fixing it in 318.
Mhm.
Like, if we didn't have that, that would be terrible. It could
Yeah.
actually, one issue could kill, the active player base.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's got to be stressful trying to triage like which bugs are the ones that could do that. Um, I agree with you. I think four updates a quarter is nice. It gives you something to look forward to.
I
And
mean, four updates a
A
year. You
year.
said four
four
updates a
updates a
quarter.
year.
That'd
Sorry,
be
not
that'd
a
be
quarter.
amazing.
There's
That'd be a
one
little
one
realistic.
update every couple of weeks. I mean, come on, CIG, pump them out. Yeah, four updates a year. Sorry, is I think a pretty good schedule. I think it's great for them to kind of try to make three of them heavy on content, and then one of them pretty like good for just quality of life, kind of cleaning it up. Whether that be the
Mhm.
last update or the first update of the year, either way. But I wonder, given
Mhm.
what you said, Griffin, about the psychological aspect of it, how hard this December or this January is going to be coming up, because normally January is tough. CIG is away. We don't have ISC. There's not much going on. This year, though, will be the first time we have literally no roadmap. Because last year we still had the 4 quarters. We could see some of the stuff that they kind of thought was going to be included.
Mhm.
Or maybe not 4 quarters, but a couple of quarters, I think we still saw some of the features. This year, though, we don't even know what's coming in 319. Like, we would have just gotten 318 at the end of a drought and then just nothing. It's I might just take a month break, to be honest. Oh,
We do. We take off. We take off during when CIG's off.
yeah. Yeah, that's good. It's going to be interesting. Um so the game is continuing to develop slowly, and over the years we've been told that there are tools and tech that allow things to kind of speed up, ramp up, make things more systemic. This has become a meme for some, a rallying cry for some, and it makes some people very angry when you say it. But we've kind of seen this here and there, um, happening over time. Do you think that that's still true? Is that still are things actually still speeding up? Are tools being made? Do you still believe in that kind of philosophy that they have?
I think they have yet to prove that their tools are speeding things up. Um, I I think the only thing that we could say for certain is that they've gotten more efficient at making ships. And ships aren't gameplay. Ships are cool, but they're not gameplay. They're definitely. I think we still need to see some more substantial steps forward. Because just to put things in perspective again, like, if they put out 3-star systems for the next 9 years, they could give us 100-star systems like they talked about. If they filled out all of the ships they have in the backlog, it would take them 10 years. Like, there's so much stuff for them to do. I still feel like we should ideally be seeing more stuff in each patch than less if their tools are working. So I know what they're saying about their tools enabling them to do things, but I'm just not seeing it yet. Another thing is, like, they talked about how, like, all their planetary tech tools are so useful, but they're still working on Pyro. They're not done with Pyro. They're
Hmm.
not done with all the planets. So I mean, clearly their planet tech stuff isn't done yet. Um, yeah, I need to see more personally. I need to see more significant steps to be able to see that it's actually helpful.
I hope that 318 can make us maybe allow us to set some expectations for future patches, because 318 is one of the more balanced patches I think they've ever released in terms of like locations versus gameplay versus core tech versus interesting things for people to do. I know it's a big patch, but I do hope that we can start to see more patches like 318 in the future.
Yeah, I mean, I hope, for example, the outposts that they're adding in the rest of the Stanton system.
Mhm.
There's quite a few of them, and if there are, I think that we start to see at least one of their tools that they've been working on. I think it's called Rastar, actually making an impact on
Hmm.
content. But if not, then I got to scratch my head and say, oh, what's going on with this? With this tool set,
Mhm.
wasn't this supposed to be helpful? So
You're talking about the
I'm sure it
ruins that
is.
they're bringing with 318, or like the actual outposts they've been talking about?
The ruined outposts, the ones
Okay.
with NPCs walking around, and
Yeah,
then
yeah,
they
yeah.
said that they're adding them throughout the Stanton system, and it wasn't originally something they were thinking of putting in 318. But since they've had more time, they're putting them in 318, which, if true, could be very 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 good and indicative of their tool set.
We'll have to
But
see
we
how
shall
that
see.
goes. Griffin, what about you? What do you think of the idea of the tools developing? Do you think that it's making progress? You seeing things not working?
I think they've made progress. My concern has to do with capacity of what can be added. You guys remember a little while back when they took Levski out and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
They talked about making room for some things there. And at the same time, they just recently told us that we're not, as Morph said, we're not through with Stanton yet. And I think a lot of people thought, well, they're not going to do anything more until we move into another system. So I am curious to see what the impact will be. I agree. How can I say this? You were talking about systems earlier and about Pyro not being finished. I don't know if it's Pyro or if it's just that the gameplay in Pyro is not finished. I don't know if it's the fact that landing zones, things of that nature,
Yeah, it's
you
very
know, need to be
ambiguous.
done
Mm-hmm.
because the studios in Canada we know have been dedicated into working on systems. So in fact, this last ISC. Jared actually mentioned Pyro and Nix. He said both of those systems, and we've never really heard him say that before. So I'm wondering whether or not, to Morph's point, we will start seeing those systems being pushed out more. But I also worried about capacity and performance of whether or not, even if they do have that stuff ready, could they even give it to us right now? I don't think that they can because of the bigger ships, all that stuff. I don't think the tech is there until we get, as mentioned earlier, Vulcan, all of the ingredients, right? Meshing, all that stuff's got to be in place before we start seeing that stuff. So how far along they are, I think they're further along in some aspects, but they just can't implement it because the tech's just not there. We'll have tremendous
Mhm.
performance issues if it were to be brought into the game, as much as it may be sitting on the table collecting dust. Some things, not everything, obviously. Um, that's kind of where I feel they are right now when it comes to tools.
Mm-hmm.
They've shown us some new
Yeah.
stuff in relation to how they made their tools. Everything's talking to each other now, where before they had all these independent software programs. So I think they can produce things faster, but whether or not it would be beneficial, just where things are right now is the issue for me.
Yeah.
I I actually think after Pyro, whenever that comes out, and I shouldn't say Pyro, after server meshing, whenever that comes out, I think that will then be the true test of whether or not their tool set will see the fruits
Hmm.
of their labor, because after that technology enables them to produce more systems, if we don't start seeing more systems fairly quickly, like within the
Yep.
next 2024, we should see at least a handful of new star systems. I
Hmm.
know that sounds crazy considering the pace we've been at, but they
Yeah.
need to be at that pace.
Yeah.
I mean, that's even too slow. Like I've been saying, 3 star systems per quarterly patch. That's how much they would have to do it in 10 more years
Yeah.
to
I
get
think
all the star systems.
Yeah.
10 years.
I think people are kidding themselves if they think that it's going to happen in 10 years. I don't expect to
Yeah.
see, if we ever reach 100 systems, I don't expect it sooner than 20 years from now.
What I've
Yeah. I
always
mean, I think that's realistic. Yeah.
I've always said, to be honest with you, at the scale that we're in this game, if we get 50 systems, that's a lot of
Right.
systems. That's
Yeah.
a lot of real estate to deal with. And so, if this
Hmm.
game is something to have the longevity of games like Eve or World of Warcraft, you could look at a 10 to 20 years process of building it out. They'd
Hmm.
have to be strategic on how they do it. Obviously, certain systems they want to put in because of lore and what connects to what. But to Morph's point, they could put out 5 systems, may not have nothing in them. But
Hmm.
they could put the systems out and add to them as necessary. So I think that I agree with you more. If I think that that will be the litmus test, right? If 4.0 and Pyro and meshing do what they're supposed to do, we should start seeing stuff come out. We should see
Hmm.
stuff start coming out.
Well,
Yeah.
that is, yeah. Yeah. server meshing is going to be. I wouldn't say it's going to be the
I mean,
big
just
dam breaking that people like to try and
Right,
make it, but
right.
definitely
It's elite. It's elite.
the removing of a huge barrier for them to start
Mhm.
scaling stuff up if they can start scaling
right.
stuff up. Yeah.
I just want to say, remember there are some gameplay loops that require multiple star systems.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's true.
Exploration,
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
not,
shipping,
Yep.
and
data
like
running.
the economy, for the law system
Yeah,
to work correctly, like all of these things, you do need other separated areas for sure. But
exactly. You need a safe zone and you need a dangerous zone.
yeah.
Right now, we've only got every kind of player is shoved into one area, and that
Mm-hmm.
inevitably creates friction.
Yep.
Throw in one more thing that we have not mentioned that I know you guys know it, but I'll say it. AI.
Yeah. AI
We
is
need to
Yeah.
start seeing. We need to start
far
seeing
away.
AI step up. AI needs to step up. We need to,
I mean,
as those systems get bigger, the human player factor without numbers means nothing. But the AI have got to get smart. We've got to be. And I know Jared gave that example about how when they run the AI on one server, they're intelligent. They do what they're supposed to do. As soon as it starts getting
mhm.
populated, they become idiots. That hurdle has got to change for us to feel like we're in systems that are lively because there's not enough players. If this thing starts to build out more systems, unless you're going to scale up the amount of players that can come in and play on a server, dramatically scale those numbers up like to 10,000 players, it's going to feel very empty. You're not going to run into anybody
Yeah.
when you get these new systems.
Yeah.
So
I mean that
g-
they once upon a time talked about how there's going to be majority NPCs flying around the universe making you feel alive. Where is that?
Mhm.
No, we've got to start seeing that too.
Yep.
Indeed.
yeah. And so these things are kind of, I would say, not things I expect in next year. I think
No.
AI will make a little bit of
No.
progress next year, maybe in terms of some of the stuff we saw at SitCon, but like in terms of them flying around and populating the verse, this is much longer term. Let's
Yeah.
talk about, let's do a little fire round to finish off here. I'm going to ask a few questions about what you guys think of next year. I want you to give you, like, a few sentences on what you think. We'll go through and hit some of the bigger topics about what's possible for 2023 just to finish up. So, first thing I want to ask really is like, what is the big thing, or what is something that you are pretty sure will happen next year just because of evidence, what they've been working on, all that kind of stuff, but you're not quite sure when it might happen? What quarter? Pick anything really from a
Mhm.
I'll
list of
let
stuff.
Morph go first this time.
Yeah.
I actually went on stream for lack of anything to do on Wednesday and just went through the progress tracker to look
I
at
did
what
that
they've been working
today.
on. Yeah, I know you put out a video on it too. It was really well done. I listened to it. About like possible features in 319 and going
Oh,
into
yeah, yeah, yeah.
2020 2023. You had a fantastic list. I mean, like it's hard to top what you said, but um there's a lot of stuff on the road on the tracker and a lot of stuff that they talked about. We have still hacking to look towards
Mm-hmm.
to
Yeah.
Loreville 2.0, and they're adding more internal space. So I think um we're probably going to see some events going on in Lorville like we saw with Orson. There are like they've been working on like satellite POIs, which are and also asteroid based POIs. I think we might see a test facility. Oh, also underground facilities. I think they might do what they did with the reclaimer and just have one single test to see how it looks. With how they do that with rivers and stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
I think there's a trend here. They put one thing in the game just to see how it looks and works out, and then much later they add more into the game. So I think we might see one or two of those things coming in next year. Maybe 319, probably not. Salmon cave missions, size 5 bombs, ship tractor beams, uh, atmospheric pressure damage, which is they've been working on for a while, kind of a small thing. Fire propagation and extinguishers. And I don't know if you noticed this, but on both the Corsair and on the Pisces, as well as on the Pisces C8R and on the Cutter, they all have slots for fire extinguishers. So it does seem like they're now designing ships for that tech. So it's kind of exciting to see that. FPS radar and scanning has been something I've been looking
Oh,
forward
man.
for a long time.
Can't wait for that.
Being able to ping around you and scan stuff. The map and radar system rework. God, we've been needing that for so long.
Yeah.
New outpost theme variants. They've been working on 0G. Well, just basically polished character movement. So the 0G stuff, the EVA stuff. the ladder movement stuff, like all of that, I would expect to see next year at some point, hopefully. And if not, what happened with this Squadron 42 helping with content,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, if not, that is not good.
Yeah, not good at all. I hope we'll see more complex AI behavior. They talked about giving AI the capability of using launchers and railguns and being able to see ships. So engaging, those NPCs that walk around on the ground will actually notice you when you fly in and shoot at you. I think it's a small but big thing. AI possibly using simple vehicles as well on the ground is something that I think they're working on already. Don't know when we're gonna see that. Maybe we won't get it until maybe 4.0, but it will change things, I think, a bit to have that kind of experience. Multi-threaded performance improvements from Gen 12 renderer with maybe them working on Vulkan integration. They said it'd be not as long to get the Vulkan integration
Yeah.
versus Gen 12. Don't know yet. They don't have anything on the roadmap. This is all pure speculation. I mean, I could keep going. There's a lot of potential things that can happen next
Yeah,
year.
there are
They don't have
definitely.
anything on the roadmap.
That's the kind of the
So,
thing. That's why I was asking, things will be next year, but not sure which quarter, because there's a lot of stuff that we know they've been working on and we've seen, and when you consider all the things that we know they've been working on, it's
mhm,
very exciting. But there's just no real way of knowing when they actually plan on that coming to the game.
right. We'll see. We know that they're working on things, and sometimes they even show those systems working to the way they present them. For
Mm-hmm.
example, the um the 1.0 version of NPC transport. They showed us a working version of it. I
Yeah.
don't know if you guys remember, and then quietly stopped talking about it.
Yeah.
Didn't mention it, didn't put it on the roadmap, never talked about it again. What happened to that? I mean, we could be so certain that they're going to put something in next year, and then suddenly it just vanishes.
Yeah. That's
What
why
happened
the
to Theaters of War?
That's why those
you know,
videos, like the one you mentioned that I put out this last week, like I make sure to say in that, I'm like, I'm sure some of this stuff's gonna make me wrong, but these are the possibilities at least.
yeah,
Um,
like strong caveat, possibility.
yeah. Griff,
Not set in stone.
what about you? What is something or a couple of
Hmm.
things that you are sure of, but not sure when they might be?
Yeah, Morph hit on a lot of the ones that I had too, but I would kind of theme mine more around. I think they're going to have a stronger emphasis on multi-crew related things. So,
Yeah,
for
yeah, yeah, yeah.
you mentioned about the fire propagation. We already know they're looking at this thing with the fuses and stuff for ships. Being
Mhm.
able to have permissions given so that players can now your co-pilot means something. You can give roles, things of that nature. I do look for an expansion on the AI piece. They've got the NPCs that now come down and land with you at the bunker, but I want to see that get enhanced more, where you've got the roaming AI, stuff like that. I'm still wanting some freaking wildebeest or something to jump me when I get out of a ship. I'm still looking for, something other than humans to be afraid of in the verse. So that's something I would love to see as far as AI goes. Um, but I remember seeing the stuff that they were doing in relation to vacuum and oxygen, things of that nature,
Oh
and that ties
yeah.
into the propagation as well. So if they start implementing those type of things into gameplay where you can turn off things on ships, you mentioned more about things that have been added to the ships. Some of the ships have areas for batteries, they have areas for scanners, they have things for life support. I would love to see those components start to get filled in. And then, of course, the cargo refactor being implemented so that the cargo decks now mean something, especially with
Yeah,
the
those
hull
Yeah.
those
A,
old
hull
places.
C, being able to utilize cargo decks that if I am mining and I want to store a bunch of conundrum that means nothing, but I just want to have some place to store it, not have to refine it. I would love to see cargo decks come into play. I know the SRV is being worked on, so hopefully we'll be able to move containers, things of that nature in the game.
That
And I
let
would
me
say like the raft and stuff like that.
Let me stop you there, because that's actually now 2 out of 3, the third episode being next week. 2 out of 3 of these episodes where people have agreed that we think the next step of the cargo refactor is coming next year with the manual timing and the manual loading and unloading.
The
Do you guys
manual
both,
loading.
you believe that'll be next
Yeah.
year? Yeah.
Absolutely.
There,
Yeah.
well, here's the thing. Originally, the cargo refactor was supposed to include these things, but obviously, as with all
Yeah.
things in Star Citizen, they got pushed back. Freight elevators are one of the things that is on the progress tracker, and I'm
Mhm.
totally certain they're working on it because it is another step that they need for the cargo refactor to work, for
Mhm.
them to have the economy for shipping function in the way that they imagine,
Mhm.
there's no way to make small courier ships right now make any sense economically, given how easy it is to load and unload and ship things. With that physicalization of loading and unloading, you can make less be worth more, and thus smaller ships become more valuable for
Yep.
shipping. So
Yeah.
I'm very much looking forward to that. I think that can be as soon as 319. Shooting for quarter 1 next year, but delayed, of course, as with all things.
Yeah, I was
So
gonna say that's optimistic.
yeah,
But
no, it'll be like we're shooting for quarter 1 next year, and then it'll be delayed to it'll be delayed mid-quarter.
yeah.
That's my prediction.
But overall, just I think nobody can deny that there are a lot of possibilities. And that's what excites me because I think 2022 kind of I know it was pretty disappointing, but I feel like we got a really nice handful of features that mattered this year. And I look forward to some of these ones that are above all else, look like they're going to improve the quality of life a lot. That's I think what I'm really excited about, that and like the new player experience with 2023. But
Oh,
Yeah,
we
that's
forgot
another
we,
thing.
we forgot to mention
Yeah.
better inventory, better
Oh, better
inventory sorting.
inventory, God.
yes, all that stuff, right? There's a lot of like active
Well,
feature stuff that could show up.
if I may make another prediction for 2023,
Sure.
I think 2023 will be similar to 2022 in that content won't be as prevalent as earlier years, but it'll maybe end with a bang. I think that Squadron 42, because they're working on it, we're probably going to see more polish in 2023 versus big features. I know
Yeah.
they're working on a lot of big features, but my feeling is stuff like the UI, stuff like, the inventory, and even to some extent, some of the ship functionality, because I think it's probably going to be used in Squadron 42, is going to be showing up in 2023, because I also think that they're shooting for an announcement in 2023 SitCon, because they announced a CitizenCon, and if you recall, they don't want to do a CitizenCon unless they have something to talk about. I think they're going to talk about Squadron 42. I think they're going to
Well,
You stole
gonna
my
I
say
prediction. You stole
we're
my
close.
prediction, but I'm going to
So
add to that prediction. I agree with you 100% about the call out for CitizenCon. I think 319 is going to have more in it than we think. That's what I will say.
I
that would be
hope
cool.
so, man, but I'm so pessimistic.
Same. So am I. Yeah, I don't really see 319 being a huge update, just because I think mainly because this ISC system was so focused on 318 that we didn't get to see too much stuff that they were kind of flouting for that quarter. There's some good things, but I'm pessimistic as well. Yeah.
Well, people said that 318 was going to be empty, and that didn't happen. So I'm just saying I
Well,
think 319 will be a surprise. That's
Because
all I'm
wait,
saying. It's just a surprise.
wait,
That's all I'm saying.
I will say, okay, let's keep this in mind though. 318 was supposed to be quarter 3.
yeah.
Remember?
319 was
Yes.
But
supposed
it
to be
got
now.
pushed back
Yeah.
to the end of the year.
Yes.
So what
Yes.
they did is they rolled features in from what would have been 319 into 318, because they were working on it.
Some
The
of the
other
stuff,
teams
yes.
are working on it. Yeah. So that's why it's bigger than it was before. It's not
Mm.
like we're getting more out of 318. It's super delayed, and that's why we're getting more out of 318. That's all I
Yeah.
want to say.
And well, then the
Keeping it
question
real.
is that stuff that was delayed, does that mean there was other stuff now that's going to be in 319 that was supposed to be in the possible 320? And it
That's
keeps
optimistic.
kind of rolling over. Well, it's optimistic, but
Yeah, don't say 320. Please don't say 320.
I mean, it's not like we have to get another patch before 4.0, and I don't think we're going to get
I think we
4.0 in the
will.
summer.
I know.
So, but all right. The next question I had regarding next year, this is an easy one.
Mhm.
What is the one feature? Because we've gotten salvage, we've beaten the beast. The meme is over. Salvage is not being delayed for another 6 years. What is the feature that's going to take over that we want that is not salvage?
Multi-crew gameplay. It's a wide net, but anything to make multi-crew gameplay like actually a thing.
So would you say
Beyond
resource
pew-pew.
management then?
Yeah, resource management, fire propagation, life support systems, like soft death, but in a more reliable way. They talked, 319 is introducing distortion damage, which shuts down ships for 5 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Like all of this is starting to kind of go towards making bigger ships more fun to play. And I think that's the biggest thing missing for me right now. I think it is fun to fly around in individual ships and pew pew, but I think it's always been way more fun to do, your Star Trek-esque
Yeah.
feeling of flying a ship. And I see your shirt, Griffin. Oh man, Star Trek. Yeah, I mean, like I'm a huge Star Trek fan, so I've always wanted that kind of Star Trek feeling of running around like, hey, I gotta get to engineering and fix this. Oh, you got to go reroute some power. All right, reroute power to engineering. We need more power to shields. Blah blah blah. You know, like
Yeah.
that kind of stuff.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
I know I'm kind of privileged. I have more ships and I've been here for a while, but I'm never worried about people who don't have amazing ships in this game because so much of the
Mhm.
amazing gameplay is not going to require you to fly or own a ship.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Hmm.
Right. I'll go with he went with multi-crew, so I'm going to go with cargo trading. I'm expecting that
That's a
to
good one.
swing back into being popular again for folks who are going back to trading again. That it's going to be significant. Just with just not just the cargo refactor aspects of it, the physicalized aspects, but just the whole idea. Because I think that Tony does want to start moving this economy thing, that there needs to be something that drives us beyond just making millions of dollars, and
Oh
it
yeah.
doesn't go anywhere. So
Hmm.
I think that even in Stanton that can happen. So I'm looking forward to seeing that trading come. I want to be able to go to the TDD in those places where the stock tickers are going by. I really want that stuff to mean something,
Yeah.
in the
And see
game,
what
and
that is.
I'm looking
Yeah.
forward to that. Yeah.
Agreed. I really hope that, a lot of people say that trading's not going to matter until crafting is a thing and they actually add values to these materials. I really hope we don't have to wait that long. I hope that they can just start to put
Same.
regular values that change to these materials in different places and just say, hey, this is
Mhm.
like, we need that. Cargo hauling is such an important part of a space sim. It's the backbone of everything, It drives the piracy, which drives the bounty hunters. It drives the
Mhm.
where are things cheapest, where are they most expensive. Like it's just a
Mhm.
lot of the game, and the state that it's been in for such a long time is so disappointing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I want to see cargo trading become a thing as well, Griffin. But I just worry that there are too many other missing features to really make it impactful. Like
Mhm.
the physicalization of it, I think, is going to increase its value and adjust it and make it better. But I still worry about things like, will they have the tech yet to give us a stock ticker that we can open in our mobi-glass to see where
Mhm.
things are valuable and not
Yeah.
our
Yeah.
system because we need that. Um, will interdiction ships be more useful? Will there be gameplay mechanics to create risk versus reward?
Mhm.
And will there be money sinks to make the act of making money even be a goal? Because
Yeah,
making money just for the sake of making money isn't that
Right.
interesting.
Yeah,
gets
just
Making
boring.
money
real
to
quick. Yeah.
Yeah, you need money to maybe pay
Reason.
for that cool moon base or,
Mhm.
uh make upkeep your javelin or so something. Just you need to like we got to put money into something, and so I feel like we're still missing that component
Mhm.
in maybe 2023, and I worry we won't get that component.
It
Mhm.
would be nice if we had realistic payouts for missions next year. The like felt like you were actually getting paid what you put into each mission because that's
Yeah.
probably even a prerequisite to the money sinks. Like, yeah, we need money sinks, but at the same time, gosh, you could do something and spend 50 minutes doing it and then get paid, like 10,000 UEC.
Yeah. What a drag that is. Oh
Yeah.
my gosh.
All right, my last question for you to close off. I think this is going to be a good one for a lot of newcomers and people who are just particularly interested in uh, what is coming up with 2023, what they should know from both a looking at the development and also playing the game kind of view. What is one thing or maybe two or a few things that you would tell people to keep in mind going into 2023 and throughout 2023 when it comes to Star Citizen?
Mm.
If you're a new player, enjoy the experience and have fun. If you're an old player, enjoy the experience and have fun. um, I don't know. Going into 2023, I think Morph said this earlier. There's a lot of potential. I think you said it too, Space. You don't want to sound like that broken record of saying, 2023 is going to be the year.
Two
You don't want to
years.
say
Let's
that,
go.
yeah, or that we're getting closer, but we are getting closer. And I think that I think that the players Uh, man, that's a real tough question to what would be the advice to give people. Learn as much as you can about the game. Understand, have a real good understanding of. I think you also need to have an understanding of what it means to be in Star Citizen. There are some people I don't tell to play this game because I know they couldn't, they're not, their feelings about playing a game. First of all, there's no game like this. The development process to be something that you're willing to wrap your head around. And there, for a lot of people, I think the game is much more approachable now than it was before,
Mm-hmm.
but it can still be rough. It can still be rough. And so I don't want to quote Jared with the whole, change is always happening in development, but that is a reality. And I think that if you understand that, it doesn't make the pill easy to swallow. It just makes it a little easier to swallow. You know, learn as much as you can. There are a lot of great content creators out here that can help, that put out a lot of good information. Uh, Absorb what you can from the history of the development to help you understand it a little bit more. And it's okay to be frustrated. It's okay to
Mm-hmm.
be frustrated. It is, because it's just that we see something. I think, Morph, you said this earlier. It's not like anything else out there. I have plenty of people who tell me they try to go play something else and they always come back to Star Citizen, even with the frustrations. They keep coming back. And I think there's a reason why that is there. So, you know, I want to say enjoy the ride to a certain degree. The ride is a little bumpy, but, we are closer. We are closer. That's all I really can say about it.
Yeah. I think that I would say to a new player, don't feel and I love everything you said, Griffin. I'm just kind of add on to that. I think just don't worry about if you hear a lot about negativity or like you watch us salty old vets talk, about Star Citizen and how beat a little bit down on the pace of development. Don't listen to us too closely because for you as a new player, what there is to experience I think is more interesting and there's a lot more for you to look into because we've all seen it gradually. It's like watching paint, right? We know every nut bolt and cranny, we know everything, but for you there's so much for you to explore, and there, I think at this point in Star Citizen development there's enough to keep you around for a while and enjoy the experience. And the next coming patches in 2023, I mean, at least for at least 318, I think we're probably going to see it live in 2023 now for sure. I mean, I don't think it's making it live this year. Um, they're adding in like racing and stuff. There's some fun things to get into with the community, and they're working on the new player experience next year too. They want to make it easier for new players to understand flight mechanics and like basic gameplay loops and stuff. So with better hints on the screen. I think it's going to be a good year for new players, for people new to the game. I don't think they're going to get sick of Star Citizen in 2023. Vets, I think, will have some I think we'll be sated, but still just subtly frustrated. But the end of the year will hopefully end with, and I think we'll end with a bang. I mean, I'm going to CitizenCon. CitizenCon is always amazing, regardless
Hmm.
of the content. It's always fun to hang out with people. So I'm
Yep.
so looking forward to CitizenCon. I hope to see you guys there. By the
Oh,
way, I'm
Yeah,
definitely.
definitely
excited for
going.
We're
my
there.
first.
Oh, amazing. Oh, all right. We have to. Okay, it's a long way up, but we gotta organize a meetup. All right, we gotta do
Oh
like a
yeah, for
big
sure.
content creator like meetup.
We will.
Um, so yeah, that's my advice. It's gonna be a good year for new players. Don't worry about it.
Yeah,
I
It'll be
Morph, make
good.
sure
yeah.
you check your email too, because I sent you an invitation to a content creator summit coming up.
Oh,
So
is
make
that
sure
the Soul Citizens?
that's the
Yes.
summit coming up.
The
Yep.
14th of January
And
was it?
Tomatoes coming. Yes,
Yep.
Tomato said he's going to make it.
Yeah,
I have to
so
look exactly when that is because it might be during my workday,
No
but
problem.
I would
It,
love to go if it works with my schedule.
it's a Saturday at I know the time is going to be the kicker for you probably, but it's at 11 a.m. Eastern time. So,
11 a.m.
but it is on a
Eastern.
Saturday. You
well
can come. You can come in your pajamas if necessary. It's okay.
well there are a lot of actually one of the best parts of this community is just how
Mm.
connected everybody is who's
Yes.
making content and streaming, and everybody's pretty friendly with each other. I will say this for 2023, um I think I was gonna say I think people shouldn't listen to me because I'm gonna be super hyped for 2023. Probably too much so. But I think that people should still temper their expectations. I think we're gonna see some really good
Yeah.
additions, definitely some amazing quality of life improvements. And a lot of stuff that just makes the game a lot more fun and interesting to play. I think the game at the end of 2023 is going to be much more fun than what other people think. Or sorry, much more fun than what people think it will be, because we've got some really nice things, like something as simple as the map rework, if that comes in next year, is going to make a world of difference. The FPS scanning, world of difference. Interaction system, master modes, engineering. Like, these are very tangible additions that we haven't really seen an equivalent for in the last few years. So I think those are good, but temper your expectations if you're expecting it to be a year dominated by 4.0 and a massive change to the game, because we could see 4.0 slip. It's completely possible.
Yeah.
Yeah, temper expectations is a great advice for a new player. Never look at a release date or prediction from CIG and think that must be when it's going to come out.
Yeah,
Add 3 to 6 months to that,
can't believe
and you're more
I
accurate.
still fell for that with the letter for the chairman. I mean, I expected
Me
there to be
too.
the delays. I
He
actually
was so candid, you know. He was so endearing
Yeah.
and candid, and you gotta love Chris for his enthusiasm. So like, I want to believe you, Chris.
Well, I'm happy I put my video out talking about 4.0 and made sure to say, hey, they're expecting end of this year, first quarter next year. Let's just assume next summer. And I think I'm still going to be off on that, but I'm very glad that I at least took that into account, because if I was saying 4.0 at the end of 2022, I would not have felt good about that video anymore. But yeah, I think there's a lot that could happen next year. There's not really much of us knowing what's going to happen until they do their reschedule in January and February. So I look forward to that. And I hope to have you guys both back on the show early next year so we can talk about that stuff. But thank you so much for joining me
Absolutely.
today. This is a fantastic talk.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Was there
Thank you
anything
for
else?
having-
Yeah, no problem. Was there anything else you guys wanted to say? Morph, did you want to bring that tablet back on screen? Re-explain to us what happened this year? Literally, anything you guys want to leave the podcast with, please feel free.
So I hope that people I hope that people realize that I wasn't trying to be negative about this year. I was just trying to be realistic and limit our expectations. So if you looked at that video and you believe what I said, you probably weren't so disappointed with this year.
I think people also took that video at face value instead of like listening to it, what you had to say, because you weren't saying that nothing was going to be done in the year. We got plenty of good additions. You were just saying it wasn't going to be like an actual game-changing year for the game, right?
Right. Well, I mean, because the thing is that Chris was saying, hey, big steps this year, PES, server meshing it, perhaps at the end. Everyone was like, oh, yeah, we're here. We're finally at the cusp. This is going to be a great year for stars. I was like, yeah, but they talked about Squadron 42. And I just want people to realize that it's probably going to be not the best year for Star Citizen ever. Maybe 23 would be a better year.
And I think what people should take from that is that we don't need a year to be a year of Star Citizen to have fun. You should
Indeed.
not base your entire enjoyment of the game on whether or not the year was a pass or a fail, was a good or a bad year. Base it on the things that you're interested in the game. I'm not going to think a year is an absolute win until we get data running, exploration stuff. Somebody else might not think the same till we get farming. Judge the game by what you're looking at, what you're looking for, and consider it on a spectrum rather than a pass or a fail. I think that's my biggest advice to people. Griffin, is there anything you wanted to close with?
No, had a great time. Thank you for the invitation. It's great to get to sit here with Morphologis and shoot the stuff. So had a good time. Thank you.
Always happy to have you, man. Can you guys let people know where they can find your content?
Yeah, go ahead, Morph.
You can find me on YouTube, youtube.com/Morphologis, or on Twitch by the same name. I'm also on Twitter and I'm on Instagram. So if you guys want to follow me on my other social medias, I've been trying to become more active on those.
And
But you should follow Tomato, because he's amazing for hosting this. He's all his stuff is always such quality.
Oh, don't worry, I'll plug myself.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you, though. Thank you.
Yeah, you can find us with the Soul Citizens. You can find us as also Twitch, YouTube, and all the other social media platforms. Our main show is on Sundays, which is our roundtable discussion with the Soul team. And then we have our roundtable discussion where you can come on and talk to us on Thursdays, and our one-on-one where you can come and talk to us on Saturdays. That's it.
Cool. Well, thank you both again for being here. This has been episode 82 of the Launch Sequence podcast. I've been your host, Space Tomato. Of course, like Morph said, you can follow me if you'd like to. Love for people to subscribe to the podcast, give it a review if you're on the audio platform, or subscribe to the channel if you're not. I will mention, though, that all the people on the audio platform get an ad-free experience. So if you don't want to get these YouTube ads, check those out. I've also got to plug my new Christmas merch collection.
looking
This
at
is
that.
a
Nice.
custom piece
Very
of
nice.
merch that we made. It's got kind of Christmas Luminalia themes going on. It's got the tomato in there, and it's we love it. So if you want to pick that up, check it out on the store. It just came out. And of course, thank you to all of our live listeners. If you are a supporter on Twitch, YouTube, Patreon, whatever it might be, thanks for coming by live to listen to us. Check that out. It helps us keep all of this content going, and it keeps this podcast ad free. But anyways, guys, thanks again for coming. Thank you all for listening and watching, and I will see you all next week.